Nina, can you tell us a bit about what the inspiration was behind it and what the project is?
Great, thanks, CJ. Yeah, we're really excited to be able to launch today a new programme that's been a long time in the making. It's a lived experience leadership programme, and it really sort of was inspired by the work that we'd done a couple of years ago. Many of you will know that we produced a report called Change from Within, that really kind of spoke to people with lived experience of the criminal justice system working in the sector to think about, you know, what are the barriers to progressing their career. And one of the barriers that came out from that report was a lack of leadership support for people to navigate their careers and to move into more senior leadership positions. And one of the recommendations from that report was to design a leadership programme to support them as well as employers in the sector as well. So we've been working and co-designed a leadership programme called ELEVATE CJS, which stands for Elevating Lived Experience, Voices, Advocacy, Training and Expertise. And it's also partly inspired by my travels about 5 years ago as part of my Churchill Fellowship over to the States, in California and New York, where, you know, I was really blown away by how many lived experience leaders were, you know, really kind of leading the criminal justice reform agenda. And the common thread between them is that they'd all been part of you know, various leadership programs in the States, one of which is called Just Leadership USA, which I went back to visit their offices, really inspired by their work. So it's been a long time in the coming, but really thrilled that we're now able to get this project underway.
Amazing. Can you tell us who ELEVATE is aimed at?
Yeah, so it's going to be a London-based pilot, so people in Greater London. We're hoping to then evaluate it and then roll it out to other parts of the country after the first 2-year period. And it's aimed at people working in the sector already who are in roles, for example, working as peer mentors, like the project you support at St Giles, CJ, where people are going to schools, doing that kind of frontline delivery roles within the criminal justice sector, but who are possibly experiencing a glass ceiling of being able to sort of being sometimes pigeonholed in those roles in service delivery, but who want to move into more senior positions, into influential positions to influence system change, whether that be in the civil service, whether it be in the charity sector, the public sector or private sector. We want to support people who are working in the sector who want to kind of reach those different levels. And we also take a very broad definition of lived experience. So it's not just people who've been in prison, but it's people who might have convictions, people who might have been over-policed, people who have family in the criminal justice system in prison, and victims of crime as well. So we've taken quite a broad definition of lived experience.
Yeah, I think that's really important. So what will the programme involve?
So it's quite an intense programme. It's a 12-month programme that people will apply for and be selected for. We're hoping to have a cohort of 20 at a time over this 12-month programme. It'll be a mixture of in-person and online. So there'll be residentials. That was an element that the Lived Experience Expert Group was really committed to, that there should be safe spaces for people to come together to discuss their experiences throughout that, as well as getting a mixture of individual support through coaching and mentoring. There'll also be work placements with employers, and we'll work directly with employers as well to support them, as well as clinical supervision support for individuals as well to support them through that process. So it'll be quite an intense programme, but a fantastic opportunity and lots of resources and lots of support for people who want to take that next step in their careers.
Sounds fantastic. Where was this 5-10 years ago? Can you tell me a bit about how the programme was designed?
Yeah, so as you know, CJ, so CJ, for those of you who don't know, as well as being a trustee of the CJA, chairs our Lived Experience Expert Group that meets several times a year, and as well as producing the Change from Within report, has then been working over the past sort of 18 months on co-designing this lived experience leadership program, because of course you don't just want to take a model from the US and bring it, to the UK. We need to grow it organically here to fit in the the environment that we're working at and to meet the needs of people here in the UK. So our lived experience leadership group provided huge amounts of advice. We also had one of our Longford interns, Jason, who carried out a whole range of interviews with people, so doing peer research to really kind of understand the barriers and what we need to put in place to really make this work. But it's a pilot, and we're not going to get it right the first time completely. So we want to evaluate as we go along, so that we can then make amendments to make sure we really are providing what people need during that 12-month period, and then hopefully we can kind of roll it out further afield as well.
Fantastic.
And I wanted to sort of ask you, CJ, as your role over the past 2 years with this role, and as a leader with lived experience yourself, what do you hope that this programme will achieve?
I think this programme really gives leaders with lived experience an opportunity, a real opportunity, to develop and become the next generation of our sector leaders. And I'd like to see graduates of the programme being elevated into positions where they can really influence change. And following on from the learnings of many great other leadership programs worldwide, doing something similar, we need to have those closest to the problem a part of the solution. And this really will provide a more formalized progression route. You've talked about all the support that's in place, the fact that it's been designed by people with lived experience, to support these emerging leaders on that journey. And ultimately, the aim is to create systemic change in the criminal justice sector and better outcomes through better informed decision-making by those individuals.
Absolutely. And as I mentioned, one of the key bits of feedback from the expert group was about this dual-pronged approach, not just working with individual emerging leaders, but also working with employers in the sector. So can you just explain a bit about why you think that's important?
Sure. Well, we can't just develop leaders with lived experience and not work with employers and key stakeholders in the sector. We need to ensure that there are inclusive working environments, that like barriers to progressions are removed and people feel able to bring their whole self to work. They're not judged, they're not stigmatized, they don't feel like they can't talk about a certain element or be kind of proud that the fact that they are, they are experts by experience, but also by the professionalism and everything else they've learned along the way. So they're not held back by that lived experience. And I think it's a bit of a journey that we need to go on. So to be able to do that at the same time would be fantastic. The program needs to support employers to understand both the support needs for people with lived experience so they can really flourish, but also the benefits of this type of leadership, which I think there's a lot of lip service around, but I don't actually think we walk that talk at the moment.
Yeah, absolutely. I think people get the kind of, the value of people with lived experience in those delivery roles. I think it's now taking it to the next stage about, that value to, all different stages of the system and in decision making and commissioning and designing of services, as well as delivering them. Absolutely. So our next steps is to recruit a project manager with lived experience to lead this programme. What will they be doing, CJ, and what sort of person are we looking for?
Sure. So, John, I saw your message in the chat. Don't give up. This particular role, the project manager, they will lead on finalising and implementing the project plan for the leadership programme. So that will include getting facilitators in place. Really, we've done the initial work, but we want it to be theirs. We want them to own it and to further develop it, and be able to do things like source and manage the logistics of the venues, the technology, how's this all going to happen in terms of the program delivery. They will also be developing relationships with employers, designing resource and toolkits for the employers to support them before, during and after the placements, so that we improve the employment practices and policies within those placements. And they'll also be working with the policy team to influence change to policy and practice with ministers, senior civil servants, commissioners. So really exciting stuff to actually remove barriers for lived experience leaders, alongside doing comms work, some line management and the learning and development work as well. We are looking for someone who has a strong interest in and is committed to lived experience leadership. So ideally it's somebody who has lived experience themselves. Again, we're using this broad definition of the criminal justice system in England and Wales. They've got at least 3 years experience of relevant work. This could be paid or unpaid, and experience of sort of managing projects and budgets. We actively welcome applicants from Black, Asian, minority ethnic communities to apply for this role as well.